They had never spoken a single word, not one. The doctors called it selective mutism induced by trauma. Adrian Sterling, the most feared man on the East Coast, had spent millions on therapists for his 3-year-old triplets, Leo, Bo, and Silas. Nothing worked. They were silent ghosts in a violent world, until that Tuesday night at the Gilded Cage. When a trembling waitress named Clara dropped a tray of champagne, the music stopped. The entire room held its breath as Adrian stood up to execute her for the mistake. But then, 3 tiny fingers pointed at her, and 3 voices, in perfect unison, shattered the silence. "Mama, what happens next will freeze your blood." The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the stained glass windows of the Gilded Cage, the city's most exclusive supper club. Inside, the air smelled of expensive cigars, truffles, and fear. Clara Mitchell adjusted her apron, her hands shaking slightly. She wasn't supposed to be working the VIP section tonight. She was a barback, the girl who hauled ice and sliced limes in the shadows. But the Gilded Cage was understaffed, and the floor manager, a sweaty man named Thompson, had shoved her onto the floor 5 minutes ago. "Table 1, Thompson hissed, grabbing her arm hard enough to leave a bruise. "Don't look him in the eye. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for God's sake, don't drop anything. It's Adrian Sterling." Clara's blood ran cold. Everyone knew the name. Adrian Sterling wasn't just a businessman. He was the head of the Sterling Syndicate, the man who controlled everything from the docks to the district attorney's office. Rumor had it he had buried his wife 2 years ago after a car bomb intended for him took her instead. Since then, he had become a monster, a cold, unfeeling void of a man. I can't," Clara stammered. "I'm not trained for silver service." "You do it, or you're fired. You need the rent money, don't you, Clara?" She did. Desperately. Since waking up in a hospital bed 2 years ago with a fractured skull and no memory of her life before the accident, Clara had been scraping by. She swallowed her fear, picked up the heavy tray of crystal flutes, and walked toward the corner booth that was shrouded in shadow. The table was surrounded by 4 large men in dark suits. Security. In the center sat Adrian Sterling. He was more terrifying in person than in the papers. Sharp jawline, eyes the color of broken ice, and a tailored suit that cost more than Clara made in a year. But it was who sat next to him that drew the eye. 3 toddlers. Triplets. They sat in high chairs, specially imported for the venue, dressed in miniature tuxedos. They were beautiful children, with dark curls and wide, solemn eyes. But there was something unsettling about them. They were perfectly still. They didn't fidget. They didn't babble. They just watched the room with a haunting intensity. Clara approached the table, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Just put the drinks down. Walk away." "Sparkling water for the boys," a heavy-set guard grunted, blocking her path slightly. "Whiskey neat." "Leave the bottle." Clara nodded, keeping her eyes lowered. She reached over to place the water glasses in front of the children. As she leaned in, the scent of her perfume, a cheap lavender soap she bought at the drugstore, drifted over the table. The effect was instantaneous. The triplet in the middle. Bo turned his head sharply. His nostrils flared. Then Leo, on the left, dropped the toy car he had been silently holding. Clara's hand trembled. She felt 3 pairs of eyes lock onto her face. It felt physical, like a touch. She risked a glance upward and froze. The boys weren't looking at the water. They were staring at her. Their expressions, usually blank and hollow, were contorted in a mixture of confusion and sudden, overwhelming recognition. Adrian Sterling noticed the shift. He stopped mid-sip of his whiskey, setting the glass down with a heavy clink. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Clara's chest. He looked at his sons, then at the waitress. I'm sorry, sir, Clara whispered, backing away. I'll just... Silas, the smallest of the three, reached out. His tiny hand, usually clenched in a fist, opened. He pointed a shaking finger directly at Clara's face. Then, the impossible happened. Silas opened his mouth. His vocal cords, unused for 3 years, rasped. Mama. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet restaurant. Adrian Sterling stood up so fast, his chair crashed backward. The security guards reached for their holsters. The entire restaurant went dead silent. Before Adrian could speak, Leo and Beau joined in, their voices rising in a desperate, wailing crescendo. Mama! Mama! They began to struggle in their high chairs, reaching for the terrified waitress with a desperation that broke the heart. Clara stood paralyzed, the tray slipping from her numb fingers. It hit the floor with a deafening crash of shattering crystal, but no one flinched. Adrian Sterling stepped over the broken glass, ignoring the shards crunching under his Italian leather shoes. He grabbed Clara by the jaw, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were wide, searching, frantic. He looked from her terrified brown eyes to the sobbing children who were calling her mother. "Who sent you?" Adrian snarled, his voice trembling with a rage Clara couldn't understand. "Who paid you to wear that perfume? Who are you?" I'm Clara," she sobbed, tears spilling over. "I'm just a waitress. I don't know them, I swear." "Liar," Adrian roared. He looked back at his sons. They were screaming now, fighting the nannies who tried to restrain them, their eyes fixed on Clara as if she were the only lifeline in a drowning world. "Get her in the car," Adrian ordered his head of security, a scarred man named Rocco. "Bring the boys. We're leaving, now." "Sir, you can't just kidnap a waitress," Rocco warned quietly. Adrian turned to him, his face a mask of deadly resolve. "My sons haven't spoken since the day Camilla died. Today, they called this woman Mother. If you think I'm leaving her here, you're out of your mind." The ride to the Sterling estate was a blur of neon lights and rain-streaked windows. Clara was sandwiched between 2 guards in the back of an armored SUV. In the seat facing her, Adrian Sterling sat with his triplets. It was the most surreal scene Clara could have imagined. The fearsome Mafia Don was currently covered in 3 weeping toddlers who refused to let go of each other, but kept reaching across the aisle toward her. "Let her hold them," Adrian said suddenly. "Boss, she could be an assassin," Rocco argued from the front seat. "She could have poison on her skin. This is a setup. The Kovacs family is known for this." "Look at them, Rocco," Adrian snapped. "They are tearing their throats out, screaming, 'Let her hold them!'" The guard next to Clara unbuckled her handcuffs. She rubbed her wrists, terrified, but instinct took over. She reached out, and immediately, Silas practically threw himself into her arms. The moment the child touched her chest, a searing headache blinded Clara. Flashback. Not a restaurant. A nursery. Pale yellow walls. The smell of lavender and warm milk. A melody hummed softly. "Hush now, my little wolves," Clara gasped, clutching the child tighter. The crying stopped instantly. Silas buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply, his small body shuddering with relief. Leo and Beau clamored to get closer, grabbing her hands, her apron, anything they could reach. Adrian watched, his face unreadable, but his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He was analyzing every micro-expression on her face. "You're holding him like you know him," Adrian said quietly. It wasn't a question. I don't," Clara whispered, rocking Silas instinctively. He's scared. I hate seeing children scared." "You smell like her," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Camilla. My wife. She used that same soap. Cheap stuff. I tried to buy her Chanel, Dior. She insisted on the lavender bar from the corner store. I buy it because it's on sale, Clara defended weakly. And the humming, Adrian pressed. Clara froze. She hadn't realized she was humming. She stopped abruptly. I don't know. It's just a tune. It's always in my head. The car swerved off the highway and onto a private gravel road. They weren't going to the main estate. They were going to the safe house, a fortress of concrete and steel hidden in the deep woods of Washington state. When they arrived, the boys had fallen asleep on Clara. It took 2 nannies and Adrian to pry them off her. As soon as they were separated, the boys whimpered, but exhaustion won out. Once the children were taken to the secure wing, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The father disappeared. The Mafia Don returned. Adrian grabbed Clara's arm and marched her into a cold, metal-walled interrogation room. He threw her into a chair and slammed a file onto the table. "Name!" he barked. "Clara Mitchell." "Wrong," Adrian said, pacing the room like a caged tiger. "I had my tech guy run your prints while we drove. Clara Mitchell died in a house fire in Ohio 4 years ago. You are using a dead woman's identity." Clara's world spun. "What? No, that's what my ID says. That's who I am. You don't know who you are, do you?" Adrian stopped pacing and leaned over the table, his face inches from hers. 2 years ago. Where were you?" "I don't know," Clara cried. "I told you. I woke up in St. Jude's Hospital. I had been found in a ditch off the I-5. Head trauma. No ID. The nurse. She called me Clara because I looked like a Clara she knew. Later, a man came. He gave me papers. Said he was my uncle. He gave me the ID. "Describe the man," Adrian demanded, his eyes narrowing. "Tall. Scar above his lip. Eastern European accent." Adrian stood up straight, his face going pale. "Victor Kovacs." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "It's a game. It's a sick, twisted game." "Please," Clara begged. "Just let me go. I won't tell anyone." "I can't let you go," Adrian said, turning back to her. The anger was gone, replaced by a haunting sorrow. "Because if Kovacs found you, gave you a fake life, and planted you where I would find you, it means one of 2 things." He walked over to a wall monitor and tapped a button. A photo appeared on the screen. It was a woman laughing, holding 3 babies. She looked happy, radiant, and she looked exactly like Clara. "Either you are a surgically altered clone meant to drive me insane," Adrian said, his voice breaking. "Or you are Camilla, and my wife didn't die in that car bomb 2 years ago." Clara stared at the photo. The woman had her nose, her chin, her eyes. "But—" Clara touched her face. "I saw the death certificate. You said she died." "I buried a body," Adrian said grimly. "A body burned beyond recognition. The dental records matched, or so I was paid to believe." He pulled a knife from his belt. Clara gasped, shrinking back. "Relax," Adrian said, though his eyes were dangerous. "I need a DNA sample. Hair. Blood. We're going to find out if I'm a widower or if I've been grieving a ghost while my wife was scrubbing floors for minimum wage." The safe house was in lockdown. Adrian had called in his personal physician, Dr. Aris Thorne, a man who had patched up more bullet holes than the local ER. Clara sat in the guest bedroom, which was nicer than any apartment she had ever lived in. Her arm was bandaged where Dr. Thorne had drawn blood. She was staring out the window at the dark forest, her mind racing. Camilla. The name tasted familiar on her tongue. The door creaked open. It wasn't Adrian, it was Dr. Thorne. He was a thin man with nervous eyes. He carried a syringe on a tray. Just a sedative, miss, Thorne said, his voice overly cheerful. Adrian, Mr. Sterling, wants you to rest while we run the tests. It will take a few hours. I'm not tired, Clara said, backing away. She felt a prickle of instinct, a danger signal flashing in her brain. Don't let him touch you. Doctor's orders, Thorne said, stepping closer. He didn't look like a doctor anymore. He looked like a man with a debt to pay. Where is Adrian? Clara asked, moving behind a heavy oak chair. He's with the children. Distracted. Perfect timing, really. Thorne lunged. Clara didn't think. Her body reacted before her mind could process. She sidestepped his lunge, grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the bedside table, and swung it with precise, brutal efficiency. Crack! Thorne crumbled to the floor, the syringe skittering across the hardwood. Clara stood panting, staring at her own hands. How did I do that? She had never been in a fight in her life. Or so she thought. She heard footsteps running down the hall. The door burst open. Adrian stood there, gun drawn, with Rocco behind him. They looked from the unconscious doctor to the trembling waitress holding the lamp. He tried to drug me, Clara gasped. He said you were distracted. Adrian holstered his gun and knelt beside Thorne. He checked the syringe, sniffing the tip. Potassium chloride. It causes cardiac arrest. It looks like a heart attack. Adrian stood up, his face a mask of fury. Rocco, wake him up. I want to know who got to him. Kovac, Rocco spat. Has to be. He was going to kill her before the DNA results came back, Adrian realized. He looked at Clara with a new respect. And something else. Hope. Why? Unless he knows the result will prove who you are. Suddenly, the lights in the safe house flickered and died. The emergency red lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. They're here, Rocco said, pulling his weapon. Perimeter breach. They tracked the doctor, Adrian cursed. They aren't waiting for the poison to work. They're coming to finish the job. Adrian crossed the room and grabbed Clara's shoulders. Listen to me. I don't know if you are Camilla or not, but my sons think you are. And right now, that makes you the most important thing in this house. What do we do? Clara asked, her voice steadying. The fear was fading, replaced by that cold, sharp focus she had felt when she swung the lamp. I need you to go to the boys, Adrian said. The panic room is behind the nursery closet. Rocco will take you. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. What about you? I'm going to kill every man who steps onto my property, Adrian said, pulling a second gun from a hidden holster. If you are my wife, they stole 2 years of our lives. If you're not, well, nobody threatens my guests. He paused, his hand lingering on her cheek for a second too long. Go. If Leo, Bo, and Silas wake up, sing to them. The song you were humming. The Wolf's Lullaby. Clara's eyes widened. I remember the words. I know you do, Adrian said softly. Go. As Clara ran down the hallway with Rocco, the sound of automatic gunfire erupted from the front gate. The war had begun. Inside the nursery, the triplets were awake. They weren't crying. They were standing in their cribs, waiting. When Clara burst in, 3 pairs of arms reached out. She ushered them into the hidden room, the heavy steel door sealing them in. It was dark, save for a small tactical light. Mama? Silas whispered in the dark. Clara sat on the floor, pulling all 3 of them into her lap. The memories were pushing against a dam in her mind, cracks forming under the pressure. The smell of the boys, milk and baby powder, was the key. Yes, she whispered back, tears streaming down her face as the first true memory slammed into her. The hospital, holding 3 bundles, Adrian kissing her forehead. Mama's here, she said, her voice changing. It wasn't Clara's timid voice anymore. It was Camilla's voice, strong, fierce, and Daddy is going to make the bad men go away. Outside the steel door, an explosion shook the house. The panic room was designed to withstand a bomb, but it wasn't designed to withstand the terrifying silence of 3 terrified children clinging to a woman who was slowly remembering she was their mother. Outside, the muffled sounds of war raged. The thud, thud, thud of suppressed assault rifles, the shouting of men, the heavy crash of furniture being overturned. Inside, under the dim blue glow of the tactical light, Camilla, sat with her back against the cold steel wall. The headache was gone. In its place was a terrifying clarity. She looked at Silas, who was trembling in her lap. She didn't just see a child. She saw the night he was born. She remembered the complications, the way Adrian had cried, the only time she had ever seen him cry, when the doctor said Silas's lungs were undeveloped. "Shh," she whispered, stroking his hair. "Do you remember the song?" Leo and Beau, huddled on either side of her, looked up. Camilla began to sing. It wasn't the tentative humming from the restaurant. Her voice was rich, low, and steady. "The moon is high, the shadows creep, the little wolves must go to sleep. But if the darkness dares to bite, the mother wolf will bring the light." As she sang, her eyes scanned the room. This wasn't just a panic room. It was her design. She remembered drawing the blueprints with the contractor, a man named Mr. Henderson, 3 years ago. Adrian had wanted just a box. She had insisted on a secondary defense. There. She gently moved the boys aside. "Stay here. Cover your ears." She went to the far wall, where a generic painting of a seascape hung. She gripped the frame and pulled hard to the left. It slid open, revealing a safe. Her fingers didn't hesitate. Right 24. Left 10. Right 55. Her wedding anniversary. The safe clicked open. Inside sat a matte black Glock 19 and 2 spare magazines. She checked the chamber. Loaded. Suddenly, the keypad on the exterior of the panic room door beeped. Someone was trying to override the lock. It wasn't Adrian. He would have used the voice comms first. "Rocco," she called out, leveling the gun at the door. "Rocco is indisposed." A voice sneered through the steel. It was a voice from her nightmares. "Victor Kovac." "Open the door, Camilla, or I start burning the house down. I know you're in there. I can smell the fear." The boys whimpered. Camilla turned to them, her face hardening into a mask of pure, maternal ferocity. "Close your eyes," she commanded softly. "No matter what you hear, do not open them." The electronic lock buzzed. Kovac had the override codes. How? Thorn. The traitor doctor must have given them up before he was knocked out. The heavy steel door groaned and began to swing open. Camilla didn't wait. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't the waitress who dropped champagne glasses. She was the wife of the East Coast's most dangerous man, and she had been trained by the best. As the gap in the door widened, revealing the silhouette of a man holding a submachine gun, Camilla fired. Bang! Bang! 2 shots. Center mass. The man dropped. It wasn't Kovac. It was a mercenary. "Impressive!" Kovac's voice rang out from the hallway, out of the line of fire. "The memory wipe didn't take away the aim, I see. Come out, Camilla. I have Adrian." Camilla's heart stopped. "Liar! Drag him here," Kovac ordered. There was a scuffling sound, and then a grunt of pain. Camilla risked a glance through the crack in the door. Adrian was on his knees in the hallway, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. 2 men held his arms. Kovac stood over him, holding a gun to Adrian's temple. "Drop the gun, Camilla," Kovac shouted, "or the boys grow up orphans." Adrian looked up. His eyes met hers through the narrow gap. He didn't look defeated. He looked waiting. He gave a microscopic shake of his head. Don't do it. But Camilla looked at her sons, then at her husband. I'm coming out, she yelled. Don't shoot! She placed the gun on the floor and kicked it into the hallway. She stepped out, her hands raised. Kovac smiled, his teeth yellow and jagged. There she is, the ghost returned from the grave. You look terrible in that waitress uniform, my dear. Let them go, Victor, Camilla said, her voice steady. You want me. You want the access codes to the Swiss accounts. That's what this was always about. The abduction, the fake accident. You couldn't break me, so you wiped me, hoping to rebuild me as your puppet. Smart girl, Kovac sneered. Adrian locked the sterling fortune behind a biometric key that requires your retina and his fingerprint. I needed you both. Now finally, I have the set. He turned to the mercenaries. Grab the kids. We leave. No! Adrian roared, struggling against his captors. One of the mercenaries moved toward the panic room. Hey! Camilla shouted. The mercenary paused. Camilla looked at Adrian. The gilded cage. Adrian frowned, confused. The restaurant, she screamed. The waitress dropped the tray. Adrian's eyes widened. He understood. It was a signal. A coded memory of a move they had practiced years ago in the gym. The drop. Adrian suddenly went limp, dead weight. The guard, surprised, stumbled forward. In that split second, Adrian drove his heel back into the kneecap of the man on his right, shattering the bone. Simultaneously, Camilla dropped to the floor, pulling a ceramic knife she had taped to her ankle, another secret of the panic room she had remembered just moments before stepping out. She slashed the Achilles tendon of the mercenary nearest to her. Chaos erupted. Adrian wrestled the gun from the falling guard. Camilla grabbed the fallen Glock from the floor. Kovac, realizing the tide had turned, fired a wild shot at Camilla and ran toward the back exit. Get the boys! Adrian shouted, firing 2 rounds into the remaining mercenary. I've got them! Camilla yelled, scrambling back into the panic room and slamming the door shut just as bullets pinged off the metal frame. Silence fell over the hallway. Heavy breathing. Then a knock on the door. It's me. Adrian's voice came, rough and breathless. It's over. Camilla opened the door. Adrian stood there, bloodied, bruising, but alive. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in 2 years. Camilla, he whispered. She dropped the gun and threw her arms around him. I'm home, Adrian. I'm home. Inside the room, 3 small voices piped up in the darkness. Daddy! Mama! Adrian and Camilla fell to their knees, wrapping their arms around the triplets. The silence that had plagued the Sterling family for 2 years was finally, completely broken. The cleanup was brutal. The safe house was compromised, so the family moved to The Spire, Adrian's penthouse fortress in downtown Seattle. For 3 days, Camilla didn't leave the boys' side. She slept in their room. She hand-fed them. The doctors, trusted ones this time, flown in from Sicily, confirmed what they already knew. The DNA was a 100% match. The woman known as Clara Mitchell did not exist. But the trauma of Clara lingered. Camilla would sometimes flinch at loud noises. She would catch herself looking for her apron. The memories of scrubbing floors and living in a rat-infested studio apartment were real, layered over her memories of luxury and power. On the 4th night, Adrian found her on the balcony, looking out at the city skyline. She was wearing a silk robe, a glass of vintage red wine in her hand. She finally looked like herself again. The boys are asleep? Adrian asked, stepping up beside her. Out like lights. Leo asked for a second story. He's becoming demanding. She smiled, a sad, weary smile. Adrian took her hand. I should have known. When I saw you at the restaurant, my heart knew. My head just wouldn't let me believe it. Kovac played a long game, Camilla said, her eyes turning cold. He kept me in a drug-induced fog for months before planting me as Clara. He was waiting for the right time to activate me to get the codes. But the head injury from the car crash, it actually messed up his plan. It made the amnesia real. He got away, Adrian said, his grip on the railing tightening. He's in the wind. He won't stay away, Camilla said. He needs the Dante account. The Dante account, Adrian repeated. The emergency war fund. 500 million in bearer bonds. I thought it was lost. It's not lost. It's in a vault in Zurich, and the only way to open it is with my retinal scan and a phrase I memorized. He will come for you again, Adrian said. Let him come. Camilla turned to him, and the moonlight caught the sharp edge of her jaw. The waitress was gone. The Mafia queen was back. In fact, we are going to invite him. What are you thinking? The Obsidian Gala, Camilla said. Next Saturday. It's the biggest event of the Underworld calendar. Everyone will be there. The heads of the 5 families, the cartels, and Kovac won't be able to resist showing his face, even if he's in disguise. He's arrogant. You want to use yourself as bait? Adrian shook his head. Absolutely not. I'm not the bait, Adrian. Camilla stepped closer, smoothing the lapel of his jacket. I'm the trap. Clara was weak. Clara was afraid. But Camilla Sterling, she breaks things. She pulled back, her eyes flashing. We are going to announce my return. We are going to show the world that the Sterling family is whole. And when Kovac comes to finish what he started, we are going to kill him. Publicly. Adrian looked at his wife. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had made him fall in love with her 10 years ago. Okay, he whispered. But we do it my way. Heavy security. Snipers. And the boys stay in the vault. Deal, she said. The Hotel Cortez did not merely sit in the center of Seattle. It loomed over it like a gargoyle of limestone and gold. Tonight, however, it was the breathing heart of the criminal underworld. The Obsidian Gala was the one night a year where the 5 families, the cartel lieutenants, and the shadowy power brokers of the West Coast laid down their weapons to drink 40-year-old scotch and carve up territories with smiles instead of knives. For Adrian and Camilla Sterling, this was not a party. It was a resurrection. Camilla stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the bridal suite, her hands trembling imperceptibly. She wore a gown of liquid silver, a custom creation that clung to her silhouette like a second skin, pooling around her feet in a shimmering cascade. It was beautiful, but to Camilla, it felt like chain mail. She reached up and secured the diamond mask over her eyes. It obscured the lingering fear in her gaze, leaving only the sharp, predatory glint of the woman she had fought so hard to remember. You don't have to do this, Adrian's voice came from the shadows. He stepped into the light, adjusting the cuffs of his tuxedo. He looked every inch the king of Seattle, but his eyes were haunted. We can leave. We can take the boys and disappear to the island in Greece. If we run, we are prey, Camilla said, her voice steadying as she turned to face him. If we walk into that ballroom, we are predators. Kovac needs to see that he didn't break me. He needs to see that Clara the waitress is dead. Adrian walked to her, taking her face in his hands. Clara wasn't weak, Camilla. She survived. She protected our sons when I couldn't. Then let's finish this for her, she whispered. They descended the grand staircase at 9 Nahos p.m. exactly. The moment the double mahogany doors swung open, the hum of conversation in the grand ballroom was severed as if by a guillotine. 300 heads turned. The silence was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. They had all heard the stories. Camilla Sterling is dead. Adrian is a broken widower. Yet, here they were. Adrian, radiating a cold, lethal power, and on his arm, the ghost. Camilla kept her chin high, scanning the sea of black velvet and tuxedos. She saw the shock on the face of Don Salvatore, the Sicilian elder. She saw the narrowed eyes of the Russian emissaries. They walked the gauntlet. Don Salvatore, Camilla greeted the old man as they reached the bottom of the stairs. Her Italian was flawless, a memory unlocked from her childhood summers in Palermo. I believe you owe my husband an apology for the shipping lane dispute last autumn. I'm back now, so we'll be auditing the books. The old Don paled, spilling a drop of champagne on his lapel. Mrs. Sterling, it is a miracle, a true miracle. It's not a miracle, Salvatore, Adrian cut in, his voice low and dangerous. It's a warning. For an hour, they were untouchable. The couple moved through the room like sharks in a reef. Camilla was electric. She remembered names, debts, and secrets. She charmed the senator who was blocking their construction permits and terrified the cartel leader encroaching on their docks. It was a masterclass in power. But beneath the surface, the tension was wire-tight. "Rocco," Adrian murmured into his lapel microphone, turning his back to the bar to pour a drink. "Status check on the vault." "Static," Adrian frowned. He tapped the earpiece. "Rocco, copy." A sharp screech of feedback whined in his ear, followed by silence. Across the room, Camilla was laughing at a joke made by a diamond merchant, but her eyes were locked on Adrian. She saw his posture stiffen. She saw his hand drift instinctively toward the concealed holster under his jacket. She excused herself and moved toward him, cutting through the crowd. "What is it?" she whispered, grabbing his arm. "Comms are down. Rocco isn't answering. The backup team at the Spire isn't answering." "Maybe it's the interference from the storm," Camilla suggested, though her stomach twisted into a knot. "The Spire is a fortress, Adrian. The vault requires my retina. Even if they breached the building, they can't get to the boys." "Mrs. Sterling!" A rasping voice spoke from behind them. They spun around. Standing there, leaning heavily on an ivory-handled cane, was a man who looked like a decayed version of a memory. He wore a mask of cracked porcelain. His suit was dated, smelling of mothballs and old spice. "I don't know you," Adrian said, stepping between the stranger and his wife. "No," the man wheezed, a wet, rattling sound. "But you know my brother. Victor sends his regards. He wanted me to tell you that he finds your choice of childcare lacking." Camilla felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her cold as ice. "Where is he?" "Oh, he's closer than you think," the old man smiled, revealing grey teeth. "He's enjoying a playdate." Before Adrian could grab the man, a deafening screech of audio feedback tore through the ballroom. Guests covered their ears, glasses shattering from the frequency. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Then, the massive LED screen behind the stage, which had been displaying abstract art, blazed to life. The light from the screen washed the terrified guests in a pale, ghostly blue. It was a live feed. The image was grainy, but the horror was high definition. It was the interior of the Sterling penthouse vault. The reinforced titanium walls were visible. The floor was scattered with toys, and in the center of the room, huddled together on a pile of blankets, were Leo, Beau, and Silas. They were screaming. The sound was amplified over the ballroom speakers, raw, terrified shrieks of "Mama! Dada!" that tore through the sophisticated veneer of the gala. Standing over them, grinning into the camera lens, was Victor Kovacs. He wasn't wearing a mask. He held a detonator in one hand and a plush rabbit, Silas's favorite, in the other. "Good evening, Seattle," Kovac's voice boomed, distorted but unmistakable. The crowd gasped. Security guards drew weapons, but they had no target. The enemy was digital, miles away. "Victor!" Adrian roared at the screen, his composure shattering. "If you touch them—" "Tut, tut, Adrian." Kovac wagged a finger at the camera. "You are in no position to make threats. You see, I have bypassed your retinal scanner. I have bypassed your fingerprint locks. Do you know how? Because I built them." Camilla grabbed the table to keep from collapsing. The betrayal. The contractor. Henderson. He must have been working for Kovac all along. "I don't want your money anymore, Adrian," Kovac hissed, leaning closer to the lens until his eyes filled the screen. "I want to see you bleed. I want to see the great Sterling dynasty burn." He held up the detonator. "The spire is rigged with enough C4 to level a city block. I press this button, and your legacy turns to dust." "What do you want?" Camilla screamed, her voice breaking. "Take me! Let them go!" Kovac smiled, a cruel twisting of lips. "An excellent proposal, Mrs. Sterling. That is exactly what I want." The camera panned to the window of the penthouse, showing the rain-streaked view of the city. Then it snapped back to Kovac. "I am not at the spire," Kovac laughed. "The boys are there, trapped in a bomb that is synchronized to my heartbeat. If my heart stops, boom. If I press this button, boom." He pointed a finger directly at the camera. "I am on the roof of this hotel, the Cortez, waiting for my helicopter. I want Camilla, alone. If anyone else steps onto that roof, I detonate the vault. If the police come, I detonate. If Adrian follows, I detonate." He looked at his watch. "You have 5 minutes, Camilla, or the triplets become angels." The screen went black. For a second, there was total silence. Then, chaos. Guests began to scream and run for the exits. The illusion of safety was gone. Camilla tore the diamond mask from her face and threw it to the floor. She kicked off her high heels, standing barefoot on the cold marble. "Camilla, no!" Adrian grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "It's a trap. He'll kill you the moment you step out there." "He has our sons, Adrian!" she screamed, turning on him with a ferocity that made the nearby guards recoil. Her eyes were wild, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "He has a dead man's switch. We can't shoot him. We can't storm him. We can find another way. There is no other way." She shoved him back. "He wants me. He gets me." "I won't lose you again," Adrian pleaded, his voice cracking. "I can't." Camilla stopped her. She reached out and touched his cheek. Her hand was trembling, but her eyes were steel. "You aren't losing me. You are unleashing me." She leaned in, whispering into his ear so no one else could hear. "The sniper rifle. The vent shaft on the north tower. Don't miss." Adrian froze. He looked at her. It was a suicide plan, a 1-in-a-million shot in a gale force storm. "Camilla, 5 minutes, Adrian!" she yelled, pulling away. She grabbed the hem of her silver gown and ripped the slit higher, freeing her legs for movement. She turned and sprinted toward the service elevators, a flash of silver and fury. Adrian watched her go for a split second, his heart breaking. Then, the mask of the Don slammed back into place. He turned to his head of security, who had finally pushed through the panicked crowd. "Get the extraction team to the spire," Adrian barked, his voice cold as death. "And get me the Barrett, 50 caliber. I'm going to the north tower." "Boss, the wind is 40 knots, the guard warned. "You can't make that shot." Adrian looked at the elevator doors closing on his wife. "I make the shot," Adrian said, grabbing the guard's lapel. "Or we all die. Move!" The service elevator rattled as it climbed the spine of the Hotel Cortez, a steel cage vibrating against the storm. Inside, Camilla Sterling stood alone. She had ripped the hem of her silver gown to her thighs, transforming the couture piece into something she could fight in. She held no weapon. She had no plan. She only had the terrified screams of her sons echoing in her memory. 5 minutes. The doors slid open, and the world dissolved into chaos. The roof was a wind tunnel. Rain lashed horizontally, stinging like buckshot. 50 yards away, bathed in the strobe lights of the helipad, a black Eurocopter sat idling. The rotors sliced the air, creating a deafening roar that drowned out the thunder. Viktor Kovac stood by the open bay door. He saw her and smiled, a jagged, triumphant grin. He beckoned her forward with his gun. Camilla stepped into the gale, fighting to stay upright. As she drew closer, the interior of the helicopter came into focus, and her heart shattered. The back seat wasn't empty. Leo, Bo, and Silas were there. Strapped into the leather seats, their tiny faces pale with terror, clutching each other as the machine vibrated around them. He lied. There was no bomb in the vault. The boys were never at the spire. They were his insurance policy, right here in the sky. "You lied!" Camilla screamed, the wind tearing the words from her lips. Kovac couldn't hear her, but he saw the realization in her eyes. He laughed, grabbing Leo by the front of his tuxedo. "Get in," he roared over the engine, "or the first one learns to fly without wings." Camilla raised her hands, surrendering to the horror. "I'm coming! Don't touch him!" She climbed onto the skid, the rain blinding her. Kovac grabbed her arm and hauled her into the cabin, shoving her toward the co-pilot's seat. "Buckle up, Mrs. Sterling," Kovac sneered, leveling his pistol at her chest. "We're going to Zurich." Camilla looked back. Silas, the smallest triplet, met her eyes. He wasn't crying. He was staring at Kovac with a haunting, ancient focus. Slowly, he raised a trembling finger and pointed at the man holding the gun. "Bad," Silas whispered. It was the same judgment he had passed on the waitress in the restaurant. Kovac rolled his eyes. "Shut up." He kicked the pilot's seat. "Lift off. Now." The helicopter lurched upward. The ground fell away. Camilla knew this was the end. Once they were in the clouds, she was powerless. She looked at the pilot's controls. She looked at Kovac's, and the mother inside her, the wolf that had been sleeping for 2 years, woke up. She didn't sit. She launched herself. With a primal scream, Camilla threw her body across the cabin, not at the gun, but at the headset cord tethering Kovac to the pilot. She wrapped it around his throat and yanked back with all her weight. "You crazy bitch!" Kovac choked, firing a wild shot that punched a hole through the roof. The pilot panicked. He jerked the cyclic stick. The helicopter, hovering 20 feet above the roof, banked violently to the right. Gravity took over. Camilla and Kovac were thrown toward the open door. She grabbed the seat frame with a death grip. Kovac grabbed her ankle. They dangled there, suspended over the deadly drop, the rain swirling around them. 400 yards away, atop the steel skeleton of the neighboring skyscraper, Adrian Sterling lay prone in a puddle of freezing water. The wind howled through the girders, threatening to throw his aim off by feet, not inches. Through the scope of the Barrett .50 caliber, the world was a green-tinted blur of rain and motion. "I can't get a lock," his spotter shouted over the comms. "They're spinning. If you miss, you hit the fuel tank. You kill them all." Adrian ignored him. He slowed his heart rate. He watched the helicopter bank. He saw the door swing open. He saw the silver dress, and he saw the shadow hanging off her. For a split second, Viktor Kovac's head was silhouetted against the stormy sky, separated from Camilla by inches of dark air. Adrian didn't think. He didn't calculate. He became the weapon. He squeezed the trigger. The shot was a thunderclap that silenced the storm. The .50 caliber round crossed the gap in less than a second. It struck Viktor Kovac in the upper chest, obliterating his heart and severing his spine. The kinetic energy tore him from Camilla's ankle instantly. He fell without a sound, his body plummeting into the darkness of the Seattle night. Camilla, suddenly light, swung back into the cabin, but the pilot, seeing the blood spray, lost his nerve completely. He slammed the controls forward to dive. "Pull up!" Camilla screamed, scrambling toward the children. The helicopter clipped the massive HVAC unit on the edge of the roof. Crunch! The tail rotor sheared off. The machine spun uncontrollably, slamming onto the concrete and rolling onto its side. Sparks showered the roof like fireworks as the fuel tank ruptured. The wreckage slid to a halt 10 feet from the edge. Then, with a terrifying whoosh, the fuel ignited. Adrian dropped the rifle and ran. He didn't wait for the elevator. He sprinted across the construction crane that bridged the gap between the towers, running on a wet steel beam high above the death below. He reached the roof of the Cortez just as the flames began to lick the cabin windows. "Camilla!" he screamed, diving toward the heat. Inside, Camilla was coughing, blindly fumbling with buckles in the smoke. The heat was blistering. "Mama!" Leo screamed. She freed Leo. She freed Bo. She shoved them toward the shattered windshield. "Run! Go to the door!" She reached for Silas. The buckle was jammed, twisted by the crash. "No, no, no," she wept, tearing at the metal until her fingernails bled. The fire roared louder, consuming the cockpit. "Mama!" Silas said calmly, placing his small hand on hers. "I've got you," she sobbed. She braced her feet against the frame and pulled with the strength of a woman who refused to let death win. Snap! The metal gave way. She grabbed Silas and dragged him through the smoke. Hands grabbed her. Strong hands. Adrian hauled them both out of the inferno, throwing his body over them as they hit the wet concrete. Boom! The helicopter exploded, sending a fireball spiraling into the night. When the debris stopped falling, Adrian lifted his head. Camilla was lying beneath him, face blackened with soot, dress in tatters, but her eyes were open, and nestled between them, wet and shaking but alive, were the triplets. "We missed the gala," she rasped, a faint smile touching her lips. Adrian laughed, a broken, relieved sound. He kissed her forehead, mixing tears with the rain. "We'll throw another one." 3 months later. The sun over Tuscany was golden, warming the ancient stones of the Sterling villa. On the terrace, a birthday party was in full swing. 4 candles on 3 separate cakes flickered in the breeze. Adrian stood with a glass of wine, watching his wife. Camilla was barefoot in the grass, wearing a simple white sundress, looking nothing like the waitress from the restaurant, and nothing like the vengeful queen on the roof. She looked happy. "Faster, Mama!" Leo yelled, sprinting around the olive tree. "I'm going to get you!" Camilla laughed, chasing them. Silas stopped running and looked back at Adrian. "Dada, come play! We need a monster!" Adrian set his wine down. "A monster, am I?" "The tickle monster!" Silas shouted. The boy who hadn't spoken a word for 3 years was now the loudest of them all. The silence that had haunted the Sterling family was gone, replaced by the beautiful, chaotic noise of life. Camilla walked over to Adrian, breathless and smiling. She took his hand, looking out over the vineyard. "Do you miss it?" she asked softly. "The power? The fear?" Adrian looked at his sons. He looked at the woman who had saved them all. "I have everything I need right here," he said. "Mama! Dada! Cake!" the boys chanted in unison. Camilla squeezed his hand. "Come on," she said, pulling him toward the light. "Let's go cut the cake. I think we've earned a little sweetness." And that is the incredible story of the Sterling family. From a trembling waitress dropping a tray, to a fierce mother fighting a helicopter on a rooftop, Camilla proved that love is the most dangerous weapon of all. The triplets got their voices back, and Adrian got his life back. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a drama. What would you do if you found out your past was a lie? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.